Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks since my last video blog, or my sort of intro vlog, and I've read the first two chapters of the book that I mentioned, which is The Whole Brainchild. And I've read each chapter twice because I wanted to make sure that what I was reading, I was understanding. Sometimes when I read through something first, it's kind of hazy, kind of cloudy. So I'll go back and I'll reread it just to make sure that what I understood the first time is what the book or what the chapter is trying to say. And so it's been a couple weeks and I've read, like I said, the first two chapters. Chapter 1 was pretty cool because it gave a story about a kid who was being taken care of by a caretaker, like a nanny type person. And on their way to school, they were involved in an accident. Apparently the caretaker, the nanny, had a seizure, got into an accident, and it, sort of freaked the child out. And so in the first chapter, it explains on how sometimes parents, and I know I'm guilty of it, is they try this again. For some reason, my phone under video recording just kind of killed it, and I was on a roll. But anyways, it's the joys and the hardships of vlogging. So what I was saying was, in this chapter, the incident with the child, parents often tell their child, don't think about it, it was a once-time thing, it's not gonna happen again. And it sort of makes the child repress it and hold it and not forget it. And like I said, I am guilty of doing these things because I know when my child has something that they want to share, or if, with either one of my kids, they come up, they have a bad experience, and my first reaction to them is, don't think about it. Think about something different. Don't think about it. Now, what the book says is you should allow your child to talk about it as much as possible, so that the more they talk about it, the more they get it out of their system. And so I've been thinking about it because, like I said, I'm guilty of, when my kids come and talk to me about something, sometimes I'll tell them, don't think about it. Just think about other things and it will eventually go away. Little did I realize that the easiest way and the fastest way for them to resolve one of their issues is to talk about it. So chapter 1 was very enlightening to my thought process and my mindset when it comes to my kids coming with a problem to me. I do listen to my kids, so don't get me wrong, and don't get it twisted that I don't pay attention to my kids, because I do. This just sheds a different light on problems or issues that kids have. Them talking about it helps them to realize in their head that it might not be such a big deal, or it might be a big deal, and talking about it helps. So I learned from reading chapter 1 that the most important thing that you can do with your kids when they come and talk to you about a problem is listen. Not just once, not just twice, but as many times as it takes for them to comfortably be able to say, okay, I don't have an issue with that anymore, or I don't have a problem with that anymore. And chapter 1 was very interesting. Very interesting. I might go back and reread it because I feel like I missed something that could help in this process. My thoughts on chapter 2 will be coming up shortly. All right, so I made it into the office, and I apologize for the blog cutting out earlier with the cell phone in the car. For some reason, it just overheated. But so to continue on the first two chapters of The Whole Brain Child, I gave you my thoughts on chapter 1 while I was in the car. Chapter 2 is very interesting because in chapter 2, once I read it, I started thinking about myself. And I started thinking about how my left brain and how my right brain, how they interact with each other. And that is the title of chapter 2, is Two Brains Are Better Than One, integrating the left and the right brain. Now what's interesting is, even though the chapter helps me to, or is written to help you understand how your child's right brain and your left brain work, and how sometimes they're at fists with each other, they're fighting against each other, what I took from it is how my brain deals with situations that my kids present to me, and also how I deal with situations that I get presented with, whether it be here at home, at work, or outside of the house. And it's interesting that, as a child starts to grow, their brain, as they say in the book, their brain is not fully integrated until they're about 22 or 23 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a lot of time from when they're born until they're 23 years old. That's a lot of information, a lot of emotions, a lot of actions that help shape how the left and the right brain interact and how they tie into each other. And, it's very eye-opening for me just to look at myself and how I deal with all these situations, or with the various situations that, being a parent is. Now, my wife is a nurse, and she probably knows this already, and she probably won't need to read this book. But for me, who I have no experience in the healthcare field, chapter 2 was very brief and very descriptive about how each side of the brain controls certain emotions and certain actions. How the left brain, I believe it says, controls a lot of the logical thinking, and the right brain focuses more on the emotional aspect, where, for instance, when a child is, reacting out of emotions, they're not thinking the problem through logically. They're focused so much more the right brain is taking over in how the child is expressing themselves. And knowing that your left brain functions like this and your right brain functions like this, I think it helps me as a parent understand, okay, it's not the right time to do this kind of intervention, or it is the perfect time to do this kind of intervention. So, like I said, I read each chapter twice just to make sure I was understanding everything correctly. I'm trying to go back and make sure that what I just said is true, that the right brain controls emotions, whereas the left brain controls logical thinking. And it's true. This image right here, you probably won't be able to see it. But yes, I was true. The left brain controls logical thinking. And so understanding this and seeing how I'm interacting with my kids, like I said, it's not something that's going to change overnight. It's something that, the habit was built. My actions are, how I respond to my kids are already there. I mean, my oldest child is 10 years old and my youngest is 8. So there's been a period of 10 years where I've trained myself, or I've gotten in the habit of responding in certain ways. And certainly reading this book, is shedding a lot of light in how I react immediately. Like I said, it's not an easy overnight fix where I read chapter 1, it's like, okay, I'm done, I'm fixed. Now, our kids go back to school next week. This blog will be posted on Wednesday. So they go back to school on Monday. And it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, if I get through 4 or 5 chapters of the book before they go back to school. I know that the issue, or not really an issue, but the hardest part was homework time. They get so much homework from the school that they go to that it's sort of a struggle to get them to sit down and do all their homework when they come home from school. I know their brains are beat. Now, I read something on the internet. I think it's a letter that's gone viral. There was a teacher who sent a letter home saying that in lieu of homework, that their child would be sent home with any seat work that they did not finish, any classwork that they did not finish. They'll be sent home, and that will be their homework to do. And once they finish, that they're free to spend the rest of the day either outside playing or spending it with family time. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. I wish other schools would pick up on this. So my friends, if you have not picked up this book or you haven't read this book, I suggest that you get it. I mean, the first couple chapters in, it's already changing how I think about things a little bit different. And I know that it's for the better. And I know that if you're having issues or problems, you know, in dealing with your children, that this might be a good help for you. Now, even if you're not having any problems and your child is the best child in the world, it's good to read something like this and see the thought process. And you can hear my kids in the living room playing. Probably they're playing ball in the house, which is okay. I learned that I shouldn't limit my children to playtime. I should let them do what they'd like to do as long as they're not hurting each other, hurting themselves, or hurting somebody else. So they're in the living room playing with a ball in the house, but the ball is a soft ball, so even if they throw it at each other, it's like a sponge. It's just gonna bounce off. Anyways, if you want to pick up this book, I'll have a link down below in the description where you can go to Amazon and purchase this book. Read along with me. Don't just go by what I say, because my experience is probably going to be a lot different than yours or somebody who's already read this book. So thank you again for tuning into this vlog. I will be posting another one hopefully on Friday or Saturday with hopefully chapter 3 and chapter 4. If you like the video, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and I'll be posting more content shortly. Thank you again.